Hello, welcome to SER422 Web Application Programming. My name is Dr. Kevin Gary. I'm your program chair in software engineering and also an associate professor in the program. I'm the course coordinator for SER422. I developed this course originally. I've been teaching this course and its precursor for over a decade now, and it's one of the courses that I'm most excited about in the degree program. This is a course in advanced technical competency in web application programming and server-side integration programming in general. In terms of where this course fits in your major map, this course for both on-campus and online students is intended to be toward the end of your degree program. It does not have a prerequisite of other courses in the web and mobile focus area. It is helpful if you've taken SER421, but it's not a hard requirement. SER321, distributed computing, is a hard requirement. You need to understand concepts in distributed computing, things like threads and sockets, marshaling data over the wire, concepts like these in order to be successful. Other concepts like the HTTP protocol we'll cover in the first week of class to kind of get you up to speed. This is a programming-centric class. This class will take up a fair amount of your time. We will set up multiple development environments for different styles of server-side integration programming. So be aware that while I don't think the material is hard, it is time-consuming and you should plan accordingly. In terms of the course outcomes for the course, again, like I was just implying, this is an advanced technology course. So some of our course outcomes are in technical competence, demonstrating technical consistency and competency in developing web applications on the server side. Another technical competency outcome is server-side integration programming. By that I mean things like APIs, service-oriented architectures, and other low-level technologies involved in building an integration architecture. Software engineering practice comes into play tied to our degree program outcome. You will do testing, you will do performance and scalability, we'll delve a little bit into security and concepts like that that are best practices in the software engineering profession. There's a design outcome. Design outcome relates to the service-oriented architecture approach. We will do a little bit of modeling of these different approaches. We'll talk about where the responsibilities go in an enterprise system for different integration technologies and what the choices you have, because not all enterprise architectures are the same. They move these responsibilities around to different parts of the system, and so we'll talk about that from a design perspective. And then finally, a professionalism outcome. We'll talk about how this impacts the structure of web development organizations. In terms of the specific concepts in the course and the technologies and techniques, we'll start by doing Java-based server-side programming in the servlet framework. We'll work with a standard relational database. We'll talk about how to make that performing and scalable and what design patterns are involved. We'll talk about the model view controller pattern. We'll talk about the DAO pattern, the data access object pattern. We'll also talk about newer database platforms like NoSQL platforms and how they can integrate into such an architecture. From there, we'll move more into integration concepts involved in service-oriented computing. Naming services, location services, how do you find components and services on a network? How do you dynamically integrate them? And where does that integration logic go? Does it go in an application? Does it go in an enterprise service bus? Does it go somewhere else? All right, where does that reside? We'll talk about B2B integration. We'll talk about application to service-side integration. So we'll talk about the traditional SOA stack. The service-oriented architecture stack. We'll talk about REST APIs. We'll talk about microservices. And then we'll move toward different kinds of deployment technologies. Things have evolved from rack-oriented, or you deploy things on your own server that you own on your own rack, if you will, onto the cloud, the use of virtual machines, the use of containers, even onto serverless architectures, as we call. We'll try and find time to get to that. So these are the kind of concepts that we'll talk about in this course, tying it back to the software engineering outcomes of the degree program. Again, this is one of my favorite courses. It's a programming-centric course. There'll be a lot of tool and technology setup. There'll be a lot of programming oriented to you as I try and give you that consistent theme of how integration architectures evolve on the server side.